Männer, es war ein langer Krieg. Ihr habt tapfer und stolz für euer Vaterland gekämpft. Seid eine besondere Truppe, die ineinander...
Hey everyone, this is the Hydra Hut, and today I want to talk about The Mercenary, the Cult of the Sacred Fire. This is by Vincente Segrelles. He is a Italian. If you've never heard of him and you've never heard of this book, that's not terribly surprising, as he actually didn't get into the comics medium until pretty late in his life. Before that, he was doing advertising pieces, trading cards, that kind of stuff. Pretty much does painting style. You can see he's quite a good artist. He does all of his own artwork, all of his own lettering, plot, does everything on this. This is by NBN Graphic Novels. This is straight out of Italy. Now, a couple things I want to say. First off, this is going to have some nudity. Basically, all of the women in this book are naked. If that makes you uncomfortable, or you're not over 18, then I would suggest bouncing. Otherwise, stick around. Also, I'm not really going to read much of the dialogue in this, but one thing I want to say about the dialogue is, while it's good, this was written in Italian, and then translated to English. And I don't know if the person who did the translation speaks English fluently, or casually, I guess you should say, because a lot of the dialogue seems really weird. It just doesn't flow right, and I'm not sure if that's because of something being lost in translation, or being too literal with the translation, or something like that. But all in all, it's a solid book. Let's go ahead and get into it. So we start off with this pretty awesome splash cover page. Also, you'll notice this book is pretty large. Anyway, over here we get this nice wordy bit, and basically this is just all of our background introducing this world. So, essentially what this says is that 1,000 years ago there formed a valley in our world that is high above the clouds. All the mountains form plateaus, peaks, valleys, mountain ranges, rivers, just like you would see where we are, except this is all extremely high elevation. The clouds never lift above this kind of seabed style floor, and instead of being extremely cold, it's actually a very warm tropical climate, which is why dinosaurs and dragons managed to survive. Also, this is completely isolated, so it's out of everybody's radar. Obviously, some modern technology would kind of, get in the way of this, but all in all, it's basically just saying, this is modern time, this is just an area where we haven't discovered yet. It also tells you what the era is called, and this is the land of eternal clouds. Oops. It's a nice Vincente Segrelles. So, we start out with our hero flying through the sky on this creature. He's looking for somebody, which you can see. He says, "There she is." A nice shot of him on his winged creature. As the camera pans out, he starts talking about the creature that he's flying, and this town up ahead, saying that nobody really sees him yet. That's good. He should be able to get in and get out. And that's when we get a first appearance of our damsel in distress. She's being basically dangled from a ledge up in the sky. Check out the armor on this guy. This like weird plate mail style, and that texturing. That's really impressive, I think. Anyway, so we see our heroine. She obviously sees him, and it's basically just him monologuing about her being alive, and he goes in to save her. We get some more butt there. So as the hero rescues her, dropping into his arms. They fly off, and that's when that town that we saw in the distance apparently noticed what was going on and sent some recruits to hunt them down and prevent that from happening. As he's talking to the lady about their pursuit, let me just read some of this dialogue and you'll get what I was talking about earlier. "My lady, let's go home. Damn, the interceptors have arrived. It did seem strange, my lady. Get behind me and protect yourself with the shield." You see that? You see that? What seems strange? She didn't say anything yet. She hasn't said anything. Anyway, how could you think to come with this mount? Fine, she finally says something, and she's judging him for the mount he picks. You know, no big deal. I saved you from a cliff, but you can bitch about my ride. That's cool. Anyway, she complains about his mount, which is obviously very large, cumbersome, and not nearly as quick as these guard mounts. And he explains that the reason for that is because this one can fly higher and longer than these basically quick little guard mounts. So his goal is to basically just out-elevate them and then out-distance them through endurance. Of course, they're just going to try and take him down. So we get this nice little aerial fight scene, which has a pretty awesome shot here, where you get to follow the arrow through its flight path, into the shield, through the shield, and taking the guy back. And the arrow breaks the paneling, which I kind of like. At first this actually kind of bothered me because the shield is still in the exact same position, but his head is all tipped back and the arrow's coming out. And in retrospect, I get it. It was going so fast, it penetrated and slammed his head back, and the shield hasn't had a chance to move. So, yeah. Very cool looking. The fight continues as our eponymous hero and his damsel in distress try and flee. He has her shield herself on the back, and we get this little interceptor throwing a spear as he travels overhead, hitting our hero's mount. You get that with the "yeah." I'm assuming is what that sound effect is. Of course, the quick-thinking hero stands, guts the mount of the guy who just threw that spear. You can see that from the "yeah," I guess. I don't understand these sound effects. If there's some small chance that an Italian watches this channel, maybe you could explain what YH sounds like in Italian. Then I might know what these sound effects are. But until then, I'm just going to assume that's grunt in Italian and longer grunt in Italian. As our hero's flying away, we can see the blood trailing from his mounts. It's actually coming from his head, but it's running down the stomach and trailing down. He's talking about how severe the wound is and how it's going to die, and they're trying to get across this ledge in the distance here before the creature's elevation drops. They're pretty desperate, talking about how they don't think it's going to do it, don't think it's going to do it. Barely clears. You can see it even knock some rocks off as he brushes it with his belly. Our damsel points out to a plateau in the distance. The plateau actually looks a little bit higher than him, but, you know, perspective and all. So they glide the creature in, preparing for a crash landing, at which thump, they land. Our hero immediately points out the fact that the mount is dead. It's just kind of coasting along. Our damsel starts to question what they're going to do, but Mercenary, who is our hero, immediately calls for his axe. She hands it to him, starts questioning him as he just starts tearing in to this creature they were riding. And this part's pretty awesome. He proceeds to cut a baby out of his mount and say that they just need to give it a few hours for its wings to dry off and they can fly again. Now, earlier he actually alluded to another special reason why he chose this mount over another, and we can assume that this was actually that reason. And all along he planned on possibly having to kill this thing and gut her for her young. I thought it was pretty, I don't know, unique. I hadn't seen it before. I liked it, I guess. So after the baby is dried off, they quickly mount up. Look at him, he's even kind of like a little, cool little baby. Cute little baby. So they mount up, take to the air. Of course, they're way too heavy for an infant. So crash landing it occurs. We get some more of these awesome Italian sound effects. At least I'm pretty sure he's doing these on his own. He's not just using some program. DNC. After they've landed, he checks to make sure that the damsel is okay, comforts her. They gather their stuff, and we can see that the baby has left. He's not hanging out. He actually comments that the baby knows where it's going to go just because of inherent knowledge. So when they're born, their natural senses take them where they need to go to eat. Anyway, so they find a cave on this mountaintop that they crash landed on, fortunately. And they decide they're going to stay there for the night, and then they'll worry about getting home after that. So, as they settle down, the damsel appears a little bit dismayed to be sharing a cave with a strange, strapping man. And he assures her that she has nothing to fear from him. He would never let anything happen to her because he was paid to protect her and save her, not to do things to her. But of course, our damsel has other ideas and basically says that her husband is a piece of crap and what he doesn't know won't hurt him. But our boy Grand Comics is too pure for that, and he says no and pushes her away. Shuns her, you could say. Because that's not how he plays. Of course, this severely upsets our damsel in distress, and we get this little bit of foreshadowing here. Damn you, mercenary. You'll pay for this. As she's plotting her betrayal, we see a large eye open in the background and hear a Mercenary is on top of things. You can even see his little teeth. That's kind of cool. Anyway, Mercenary is on top of things. He gathers up his damsel and his gear, and they bolt outside as this monster comes blowing out. He just refers to it as a carnivore, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyway, he tells her to get away, and he proceeds to try and battle this creature as it's coming out of that hole. Vroom is clearly the sound of it swooping its head to the side. So our mercenary is a quick thinker. He quickly snaps his spear. I guess you'd call that a spear. I'm sure this has a real official name, but I'm gonna call it a spear. Cracks it in half, and as the creature's opening its mouth to attack, he jumps forward, shoves it inside, and quickly leaps out as its jaw snaps shut. The bladed spear obviously penetrating its head, instantly killing said carnivore. He tells the lady she can come closer now that there's nothing they can do, but it is going to help us escape. She says, "You kidding?" Seriously, that's what she said. "You kidding?" That's what I mean about this. I don't know. It seems to me like it should be, "Are you kidding?" Or maybe something even a little, I don't know, older and more proper sounding. Yeah, anyway. He says, he basically explains that he's going to fashion a glider out of this creature. And that's what he starts to do, using it as weapon, which the blade has gotten increasingly larger. And then we can see that he's created a large leather-winged glider, which, I think MacGyver would be proud of our friend the mercenary. They quickly... I'm going to have to speed this up a little bit, I think. They quickly jump on the glider, leave the mountaintop, and head towards the city where the girl was from, actually. Now we get some people talking inside as they see the glider approaching. They clear some landing space, and then that's when we get to see her husband. Cecil himself, from diversity, inclusion, compassion, and kindness in comics. It was so kind of him to to work with Vincente on this. He's pretty happy that the mercenary's done his job. He's super stoked. We don't get any of the deal with the boring landing stuff. It's pretty much, she's immediately here. And, of course, as he's talking to her about how happy he is to have her back, she immediately tells him that the mercenary raped her. and he believes her, and sicks the guards on him. So, I know in the real world, a woman would never falsely accuse somebody of rape. But in fantasy world, it's quite common. Anyway, without a court system, this is generally what happens. You take the word of the accuser, and you end up bailing off of a cloud city with your glider, getting arrows pumped into you as you plummet to your death. The guards aren't overly worried about our mercenary leaving because they really have no faith in his flying machine's ability to make him survive. Also, they all pretty much assume that everything below the clouds is death and doesn't exist. I believe it's in that little prologue at the start they kind of mentioned that it's considered like hell down there. Anyway, Mercenary makes his slow descent into the clouds and suddenly reaches the bottom to see that there's a whole nother world below them. Now, he sees a city, spots for it, and starts gliding. They never really showed him actually getting attacked, but as he's landing, he's very, very sick. See, can't stand, lands, collapses, passes out. And then as we change scenes, we get this old man offering him water. And we find out that the reason he was sick was because of altitude sickness, because when you change altitudes at a fast rate, your body... I actually should have looked up the proper terms for this. But you can't descend too quickly, or you get air bubbles in your blood. That's basically what happened to him, and this old man's tea somehow fixed him up, which is pretty cool. The man starts explaining to him that he's really happy he's here, but he's pretty sure that that guy came from the same place as these people who are keeping his village's chieftain's daughter captive. And he wants him to help him, and he's like, I'm not with these people, but I'll see what I can do. So the old man shows him that this cage you see in the distance, hanging from the clouds, is where the chieftain's daughter is held. And to get her back, they have to produce, what is it? They have to produce a bunch of alcohol, 1,000 skins of alcohol, to get her back. And this disgusts Grand Comics that they wouldn't just ask for gold, they're demanding alcohol like a bunch of lushes. It says right here. Alcohol? What a bunch of lushes. It's so easy to demand gold. It's so easy to demand gold. What is that? That's not how you... Vincente, talk to your translator and get that fixed. So he agrees to do something about it. They take him up to the hillside to, give him more information about this. And that's where we see this large rope anchoring something in the clouds down. And they say if they touch the rope, the daughter's dead. If they try and save the daughter, she's dead. The only thing they can do to save her is give her the skins. Well, Mercenary's like, I can just go glide down there, save her, and glide back down like before. So they haul his wings up, and he jumps off the mountain, and we see him approaching our new damsel in distress hanging from this little bird cage. Of course, she is also partially nude. That would be very painful. Never run the rope across the nipple, guys. That advice is on me. So as the mercenary reaches the cage, they start to lift it. Panicking and not wanting to lose his one opportunity to save her, he ditches his wing, grabs onto the cage, and climbs inside with her. And that's when we see the cage being hauled up into a large apparatus above. I will skip this page. Basically inside there's a group of people in hoods, and they demand that he strip down. We see that at least one of these people in the hoods is a female. And they don't really give any indication as to any of the others. They're all fairly kept close. What they're planning on doing is binding him up and taking the woman back to another cell. They're obviously upset that somebody would try and save him. After getting him bound, they drop him down into a holding cell, which we can see the holding cells here. Pretty interesting setup. Inside, he's left basically still bound. They don't leave him suspended, though, which is probably not the best idea on their part. He starts trying to see if he can figure out some way to escape. The ropes are too tight, and he's just about to give up when, crack! the obvious sound effect a sword striking the ground would make. He makes a comment saying that there's probably somebody here who likes him, or at least is rooting for him. Quickly cuts himself off, jerks on the rope to see if it'll be able to climb up it, and of course it just spools out of the reel. And we get this little, it's not really comedy, but it made me giggle. Basically disappointed that his plan failed. So he fashions a quick belt and decides to try and dig through the wall. Turns out the walls are actually cardboard, and he easily cuts through, finds his new damsel in distress again. Still not fully clothed. Better ropage, though. Saves her, and he's talking about how easy it is going to be to escape, because they're just going to be able to hack their way through these thin cardboard walls. Also, this whole time he's trying to figure out how this place stays afloat and what's going on here. As they're trying to sneak away, they come across the people maintaining the sacred flame, as they call it. That's when he decides that their only plan is to probably go outside and see if there's some way for them to escape, especially while these people are busy. Once they get outside, they find out that they're just floating in the air on some contraption, and he realizes that they're not going to be able to just leave. They're going to have to fly away somehow. Some more lovely art as they're walking through. As they're trying to find a way to escape, one of the cloaked figures stops them. And it turns out the one is actually the one who gave them the sword. They start to tell them that, basically give them a rundown of what's going on here without telling them any information, and saying that they want to help them leave, but they have to agree to take them with her. That's when our hero kind of realizes that it's probably a woman. And of course, the only way possible, she reveals that she is indeed a woman. And that's when she tells us that everybody aboard this ship is actually part of a harem that belonged to a sultan. And as she's telling this story, we see this guy. So of course, I thought fat fuck here was the sultan, but he's actually just a green guard. I don't know why he's green, but he is. This is actually the sultan. And what happened was these harem girls got tired of living with him, so they convinced him to let them build a large structure in celebration of his greatness. And as soon as they completed it, they got the hell out of Dodge, and now the Sultan's been hunting them down ever since. The mercenary's like, yeah, that's great, I'm sorry, but how is this flying? And as she's about to tell the simple secret to how it flies, we hear from the distance, "Enough, Zeta, say no more!" And we see the speaker shooting an arrow straight into Zeta, ending her secret-telling snitch self. We get a scene where Mercenary is not overly pleased that his rescuer was murdered in cold blood. I'm not going to ruin too much of what goes on here as far as the story goes, because I would like people to actually read this. But essentially, as the Mercenary is fleeing, we see Zeta get back up. She creeps into the room where the sacred flame was, and this is the alcohol outlet that feeds the flame. And she means to turn it off. But what actually happens is she causes the fire to get even more impressive. We can see that she died on her way there and actually hand collapsed on it, forcing more alcohol into the system. So, as this is going on, they never really express exactly how this is flying, but right up here is where we're about to see it. I'm going to call them sisters from now on. As the sisters realize that the flame is getting hot, the structure is rising, and they're basically saying that their only hope is that the ropes hold. And that's when we see the rope, and it is not holding. After the rope gives way, the sisters begin to commence freaking the fuck out, and chaos ensues. Now, as the structure is rising, the air begins to get thinner, and the mercenary and our new damsel both mention that it's becoming increasingly hard to breathe. So the mercenary gets the bright idea to get back in the cage, lower it down below the structure where the air is good, and go from there. And we get a shot of the Cloud City. You might recognize this. This is where our original damsel is still residing. And we see this large steeple coming out of the clouds. People in the building see it as well. See more of the steeple. More. And this is where we start to see that, we get an idea of what this actually is. We also see another shot of Cecil, a boy Dick in comics. And he is absolutely shocked to see something like this. That's when we finally see that their entire city thing was actually just a giant hot air balloon. So now you can understand why the more fire was causing it to go higher and higher. As it raises up, our boy and his new damsel get into the cage, drop the cage down. We can see it starting to suspend from the hot air balloon as it keeps rising, unable to stop. Inside our glass dome, Cecil spots the man inside the cage and recognizes it as the Mercenary. But he is positive that it's not the Mercenary, it's a vengeful spirit, and he's freaking out. As the cage comes closer, they start getting even more and more worried. It starts to rise, it might pass the dome, but it clips the top. And inside, we hear, "He's knocked the keystone off the dome, it's going to collapse." And that's exactly what it does. This is really cool, though. I like this. I'm just going to assume everybody has seen glass in bathrooms with the weird, like, texturing. You see it a lot in, like, gyms and stuff. And that's what they have. That's what he's done to this glass. And then even when it collapses, it keeps all these shapes nicely kept together. I don't know, it's just very good. Very, very good artwork. Very impressed with it. So after the dome collapses, the cage happens to get close enough to this mountaintop, which you'll notice is above all these clouds, and above this dome, and above the zone where it was very, very, very hard to breathe. They managed to bail out of the cage onto the mountainside. And then this is where our story ends for now. And it's kind of a weird ending, because essentially the Mercenary just says, "Well, I've got stuff to do, so you head on back down home, and I'll see you later." And that's the end of the story. But that's how Grand Comics rolls. He's not just gonna go dipping into somebody else's soil without a reason. And this is the end of this book. Now we just have a lot of information about Vincente Segrelles and all this amazing artwork and illustrations that he's done and explanations on the book and why he does it. And a really funny bit about how the reason this didn't sell in America as a comic is because of our weird laws on nudity. And he thinks it's funny that after the Italians managed to, free themselves from all the various forms of oppression that they went through, they were much more comfortable with the female form and sex as a whole. But America has always been kind of stuck up in reserve because of our, I guess, religious background and morals. But anyway, this was The Mercenary, The Sacred Fire by Vincente Segrelles. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm an ignorant American. But you guys should definitely check this book out. Thanks for watching. If you managed to stick it through the whole thing, I appreciate it. Yeah, Hail Hydra, baby.